Welcome back to this Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Arise News analyst Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and Wale Gomez, Managing Director of Quant Capital Limited. President Muhammadu Buhar has given the Inspector General of Police a 3-month extension in office to allow a successor to be chosen. Muhammad Adamu's tenure expired on Monday, February 1, after he completed the compulsory 35 years in office. Consequently, he'll have to continue in office pending when a new appointment is made to fill the position. This came as the presidency launched a pushback over agitation for the appointment of service chiefs along ethnic lines. He said the president's decision in picking a candidate to fill any post in any of the security agencies will be informed by the ability of the appointees to secure lives and property and not their ethnicity.
Mr. President has decided that the present IGP, Muhammad Adamu, will continue to serve as the IG for the next 3 months to allow for a robust and efficient process of appointing a new IG. I think this is not unconnected with the desire of Mr. President to not only have a smooth handover, but to also ensure that right officer is being appointed into that position.
Meanwhile, the president had earlier this week forwarded the names of the immediate past service chiefs and the chief of defense intelligence to the Senate as non-career ambassadors designate, urging the lawmakers to give expeditious consideration to the nominations. President Buhari had on 26th of January accepted the resignation of the former service chiefs and nominated new ones to take over. So this decision came to many as a shock. Here to weigh in on this conversation is human rights lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana SAN. But we're still trying to establish connection with Femi Falana SAN. As soon as we're able to do that, we'll bring him into the conversation. Well, Modele Sharafa Yusuf, let me start with you. What are your thoughts on this development that has generated a lot of commentary and concern from many Nigerians?
Thank you, Ruben. This clearly looks like what we call a golden parachute for the former service chiefs. As you know, a golden parachute is an agreement usually between a company or a government and its employee, specifying that the employee will receive certain significant benefits if employment is terminated. Clearly, it seems to me that the tenure of the former service chiefs was terminated rather than it being a voluntary retirement. And but it also seemed to me like the president was magnanimous enough to give them this soft landing. And if it might not be untrue that this agreement was reached before they stepped down or they were asked to go. The reason for coming to that conclusion is not far-fetched. There's been a lot of outcry from Nigerians about the performance of the service chiefs. And as I said on this program last week, they will be judged by history, whether they did well or not. But clearly, a lot of Nigerians were unhappy with their service, with the outcome of their efforts. And so there was a lot of outcry, and it seemed to me that the president reluctantly allowed them to go. People who know President Muhammadu Buhari tell me that he's very loyal to his friends. He would stick by them, even if others think they haven't done well enough. That might be, it might be a good personal trait, but it might not necessarily be a good presidential trait. But it is what it is. The service chiefs have been asked to go, and they are clearly being rewarded for something.
Well, Mr. Gomez, let me come to you. Modele Sharafa Yusuf has talked about loyalty and the president rewarding the former service chiefs by nominating them as ambassadors designate. Now, Garuba Shehu, the spokesperson of the president, has also issued a statement in which he said categorically that the former service chiefs are being rewarded for hard work and that nobody should criticize them, not even the People's Democratic Party, that has issued a statement saying that the appropriate place for the former service chiefs is an appearance before the International Criminal Court at The Hague. What do you think?
I think that if a person has done a good job, they should be rewarded. But my problem here is that we're not too sure if they've done a good job. And when you're sending ambassadors out to represent our country, I think you should come out with the best of the best, not people that are your friends or people that are loyal to you. We want the best fit because that is how they will see us as a country, that we have brought in the best to represent them. Be that as it may, he has chosen them, and we hope that they will represent us well. The problem we have is that some of them some people are suspecting that some of them will be reporting to The Hague very soon. But I feel that being ambassador of Nigeria has given them some little bit of leeway for diplomatic immunity. Our professor is here. He's an expert in international law or international structures. I just feel that we should have presented the best to the outside world to see that we have the best, not people that are being rewarded for a job well done, which it's in quote. We're not sure if Nigerians will accept that will accept them as they've done very well. That's what I feel it is.
Prof, let me come to you. The main concern of many Nigerians, although the government, until this statement by Garuba Shehu did not really provide a justification for the appointment, but I think Garuba Shehu has, clarified that. But the major concern among Nigerians is that the president has made this move in order to ensure diplomatic immunity for these former service chiefs. But the Rome Statute, Article 93, Article 97, is there anything about diplomatic immunity for persons who have been accused of crimes against humanity under those articles of the Rome Statute, the enabling statute for the International Criminal Court?
You have already answered the question very clearly. It's so clear. When you talk about immunity, first of all, there are many types of immunity. Sovereign immunity, diplomatic immunity, consular immunity, organizational immunity. When you look at all this, they are governed by two fundamental principles. Principle one is that immunity applies for whatever you have done in official capacity on behalf of government. So if you engage in any private endeavor, immunity doesn't cover that. Even if you go to Article 29 of the 1961 Diplomatic Convention done in Vienna, it clearly talks about inviolability. We can understand. But the issue is that all these service chiefs have committed offenses purportedly before their appointment. Okay? So if, for instance, you appoint them non-career ambassadors, now, for as long as they are in office, they cannot be touched. Okay? They will be untouchable. They are inviolable. Immunity, in this case, they can be free. But when they leave office, all right, they can still be targeted. So that's the first issue on immunity. The second point there is that Mr. President and all the Shehu Garba of this world, they still belong to the irregular school of thought, which believes that diplomacy is just about whining, about dining. They do not look at diplomacy as a profession that requires tact, and that's where Wale Gomez, my brother, has drawn attention to. In this case, the business of a diplomat, of an ambassador, goes beyond the representational functions they always talk about, representing Mr. President, protecting the interests of Nigeria, and so on and so forth. The critical point there is the capacity, the capability of an ambassador to respond to unexpected situational realities, whereby his brain must be very sagacious. He must have a Solomonic disposition. So in this case, it's not just any Dick and Harry, quote and unquote. You can have your PhD, you can be a professor, you can be anything, but you must still have that negotiating capability. That is the issue. So if, like Wale rightly pointed out, saying that, look, it's not a question of your appointing your friends. If your friends have that tact, that intellectual resource acumen, yes. But as it is, the danger for Nigeria's diplomacy is clear. Their records are there in the ICC that they have committed war crimes, crimes against humanity, and so on and so forth. They are there, listed. And in this case, whenever the time is clear for them, they may be called upon.
Well, what we know is that the International Criminal Court has not commenced any investigation. What we have is just a preliminary report of examination carried out on Nigeria. The ICC will still have to get the permission of the pre-trial counsel before we can even begin to talk about investigation. And these things take time. Mr. Falano, SAN, has raised quite a number of points. And I could see that in at least two regards, he concurred with some of the views you expressed before he joined us.
You know, truth is constant. Truth is constant. Femi Falana is considered good simply because he justifies whatever hypothesis he brings forward. He has only told us the reality. He has given us many suggestions. For instance, now, in the case of Akredolu in Ondo State, even though the senior advocate believes that, well, you cannot ask any person, any foreigner, quote and unquote, to leave your state. In this case, as much as I want to agree with him, there is the need to address the fundamental issue of land. I've always raised this issue. There is no terra nullius. That is, there is no land without title. Whether you are talking about ranching or otherwise. If you have a ranch in Sokoto, in Kano, who owns that particular land? Because this issue of herding is a private business. It's private business. So the federal government should tell the people of Nigeria what vested interest it has in using public funds to promote private businesses. We need to understand, why is the federal government not interested in my own private business and giving me money? The issue now, he quoted other section 42 of the forestry land. He's right. I am asking, why is it that we are asking the trespassers to go away instead of arresting them and prosecuting them? Because they actually trespassed. Why are we not applying the law? So in this case, generally speaking, the main problem in Nigeria has always been that Mr. President himself does not always respect, he doesn't show readiness to respect rule of law. the government of Buhari reflects only after action. The government doesn't always think before action, and that's the problem.
Well, on that note, let me invite Wale Gomez here to respond to some of the issues raised by Falana SAN.
First, I want to say something about what Prof just finished saying, that the president does not react to illegality. I want to say, one, he does not react. Number two is the fact that police are is it the president's duty to arrest the people that are messing up our country?
He's commander-in-chief.
Oh, no, hold on. This is where I'm going. I think there are signals that is being emanated from the top down. The body language that allows people to do things with impunity. That is the problem I'm having. How can we, prior to 5 years ago, we have never heard of herders disturbing us in our country. They are all in the terrains. We are free to travel, go anywhere we want to go to, because we know it's a free country. But now you're scared of traveling because you might be captured. It's the body language, and I'm suspecting these people, these herders, if they capture all of them, most of them are not real Nigerians. The reason why I said it is this. The DNA in us as Nigerians will not allow people to do the horrible things they're doing to us as Nigerians. We saw some notes a few days ago, that said that in the fact that they're saying that some people were brought in, it's on the news, were brought in from outside the country. They don't have the mindset of a typical Nigerian, because the life of Nigerians don't mean anything to them. But a real Nigerian will not want to go and keep killing people left, right, and center.
They need a land in Nigeria to settle.
That is.
Well, Prof. and Mr. Gomez, I understand Yemi Adamolekun has now joined us. Yemi, thank you for joining us, but we have just about 3 minutes to go. Your thoughts on the submissions by Falana SAN on the various issues we engage in with: vaccines, security, extension of tenure for the Inspector General of Police, and also the nomination of former service chiefs as ambassadors designate.
Thank you. I mean, for me, just to add to what Mr. Falana said and what Professor Akintarewa was speaking about, we have laws. So, quit notice, technically, when they can be arrested for their offenses. Not quite sure that's the right approach. But I think just more importantly is that the president's actions shouldn't have taken anybody by surprise. It won't be the first one. He traced it back to General Obasanjo's time, or President Obasanjo's time. But even for this president, from the EndSARS protest in October, the IGP was one of the demands for a particular group was for the IGP to be fired based on this. So that is October. Now we're 4 months after that, and we're not prepared to replace an IGP that we knew was going to retire. Mr. President has shown over and over again that he does things when he wants to, how he wants to, not necessarily following law, protocol, or precedent. And I think for us, we should be less surprised by those actions, but also shows that for Nigeria to compete, I mean, maybe the exception of for Nigeria to compete in the 21st century, we really need a different crop of leaders that are able to lead with vision. And that's really what we need to start talking about as a people, what that looks like, what the criteria for that is, how we begin to select those types of people.
Well, Yemi, it's time now for that break that I talked about here on This Day Live, this Sunday talk show. When we return, the conversation will continue. Stay with us. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akintarewa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Yemi Adamolekun is also here, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Arise News Analyst, Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and Wale Gomez, Managing Director of Quant Capital Limited. Well, let's move on to our next story. Following announcements that the World Health Organization has disqualified Nigeria from the global vaccine bid, shortlisting 4 of 13 African countries to receive the first batch of the Pfizer and bioNtech vaccines, WHO's Nigerian representative says the health organization is committed to ensuring the country receives coronavirus vaccines this month. The comments came at a press conference held in Abuja on Saturday. And our Arise correspondent Amaka Ude has the report.
Nigerians this morning woke up to the headlines that says the country has been disqualified from having access to the initial 320,000 doses of the Pfizer bioNtech vaccines that has been allocated to the African continent, of which Nigeria was supposed to get 100,000 doses. Dr. Walter Kazadi, the WHO's representative in Nigeria, says the country hasn't been disqualified from accessing vaccines through the COVAX facility and will be supported.
WHO has not disqualified any country in Africa from accessing COVID-19 vaccines through the COVAX facility, but rather is supporting all countries to access vaccine as quickly as possible by the COVAX facility. And 18 countries in total were finally chosen to receive initial Pfizer doses globally, out of the 72 that expressed the interest. On the Africa continent, as of 18th of January deadline, COVAX receives 13 submissions, and the multi-agency committee evaluated the proposal, of which 9 were recommended as ready to deploy the Pfizer vaccine, including Nigeria. There were 18 that were recommended. They included Nigeria. Unfortunately, it was not feasible to provide each of these 51 countries.
The head of Nigeria's primary healthcare agency says 320,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine is available to COVAX countries, but it's been decided to be given to nations where it can have more of an impact.
There are a number of factors that were considered in allocating the small quantity of about 320,000 doses of Pfizer vaccine to COVAX in Africa. These include the mortality rate from COVID-19, the number of new cases, the trend in the number of cases, the population of the countries, and the availability of appropriate cold chain equipment. It is clear that countries such as South Africa, which received the Pfizer allocation, have the new strain of the COVID-19 virus. Given that smaller countries such as Cape Verde and Rwanda have smaller populations, the Pfizer vaccine would not have served the best public health it thinly across the African continent. 100,000 doses to Nigeria, we have all agreed, will have been a drop in the ocean. So it is a welcome development that we're receiving 60 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine to replace the Pfizer vaccine within the same month of February.
It had been thought that Nigeria was being refused access to the vaccines because of an inability to store it at the required super low temperature, but it's confirmed that this is not the case. Nigeria hopes to receive enough vaccines to protect 40% of the population by the end of the year, rising to 70% at the end of 2022. Amaka Ude, Arise News, Abuja.
Well, that's the report there by Amaka Ude, Arise News correspondent, of the press conference, the joint press conference that was held on Saturday, that's yesterday, by the National Agency for Primary Healthcare Development in Nigeria. And we saw Dr. Faisal Shaibu there, who is the head of that agency, and also the WHO representative in Nigeria. Well, 5 days ago, Dr. Shaibu himself had made the point that Nigeria was not going to get the Pfizer bioNtech vaccines, but that Nigeria was going to get the AstraZeneca vaccines. Out of the 16 billion doses meant for Africa, Nigeria alone will get over 6 million, which is even a larger quantity. And that's what he was referring to when he said 100,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine would not have made much difference anyway. And he also gave the clarification that Nigeria has, the cold storage chain facility. They acquired about 3. But the concern about that, of course, is that for the Pfizer vaccine, you need minus 70 degrees Celsius to be able to store it properly. But the AstraZeneca vaccine will perhaps serve our interest much better. Earlier in the week, Moeti, the WHO Regional Director for Africa, had said that WHO was going to prioritize those countries that have a national vaccination plan and strategy and that can show that they can handle the logistics of distribution. So in my view, it's better to take the Pfizer vaccine that requires serious storage conditions to countries that can meet up. And then we are probably better off with the AstraZeneca vaccine. But do we have the plan in place? We need more transparency. Modele, let me come to you quickly. Yes, I understand you want to comment on what Prof said earlier. We can start with that, and then you focus on vaccines and Nigeria's plan for vaccination.
Yes, very quickly, let me respond to what Prof said about government not having, not getting involved in promoting private businesses. Not spending public funds, according to him, to promote private businesses. While that may be true, as we all have said, government has a responsibility to protect its citizens. And if this is a big problem, government should be involved in one way or another. So people like Dr. Ganduje, who are offering ranches for these herders, are doing the right thing, in my opinion. After all, there are precedents in this direction. Government is heavily involved in the Anchor Borrowers Program, which was launched in 2015, where government gives farmers land, inputs, supports. They even give stipends to farmers until their crops are harvested, and they link them to anchors who offtake their products. So this cannot be any different. As a matter of fact, poultry, animal husbandry is one of the things that is under this Anchor Borrowers program, one of the products that government is targeting under the Anchor Borrowers program. So government being involved, I think it shouldn't be a problem. So going straight to the vaccination issue, I think that as Mr. Falana said, the biggest tragedy for me in all of this is the fact that government doesn't seem to be ready, even for this vaccination to take place. Logistics has always been a big problem in Nigeria, and for as long as this is not taken care of, for as long as we don't seem to see that this is being taken care of, then we have reasons to worry. It is one thing to receive the vaccines, as it is, as they have promised to give to Nigeria. It is another thing to be able to distribute it effectively. Transportation is one of the smallest problems. As a matter of fact, we're here for this vaccination to be a success. Cold storage is one. Data of who gets what and when and how to follow up is another. Really, it is the logistics that I think they should try and start focusing on now. And so once the vaccines start coming, we can be sure that it will be well done.
Well, I still insist that we're probably better off with the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is cheaper, and we're going to get 16 million doses of that. Talking about cold storage, only 2 states in Nigeria have been talking about facilities for storage. Ekiti State, where the governor says he's made available solar-powered storage facilities for about 177 wards. And then Kaduna State, where the governor, Nasir El-Rufai, is partnering with a company called Zipline to provide drones for distribution. But many other states have not even started, so you are right. But Mr. Gomez, you have dual nationality. Have you taken vaccine? Because I know people with dual nationality in Nigeria, they have an advantage. They just go to their other country.
I am planning to take my vaccine very, 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 very soon abroad. And let's go back to the topic.
No, why abroad and not in Nigeria?
Because I love myself so much. But let me tell you something about the whole thing. See, I'm looking at more of the efficiency level of these vaccines. There are some that say they are 96%, there's some that are 95%, some are 99.9%. And I believe that as a country, we should have planned, because we know that we cannot produce it here for now. And it's coming from abroad. We should have made an adequate preparation for the expectation of the vaccines. I mean, the same story we keep hearing over and over again. Incompetence, unpreparedness, the whole thing comes same way. Now, right now, there's some Israelis that have created, the thing that you spray on your nose, a nasal spray, which is a lot more, even a lot easier to manage. We can try as much as possible to go and see if we can get that. That does not need any storage facility. It's worked, it's 100% perfect, and we should consider that. But in terms of Nigeria getting prepared for this vaccine, that some of them will go, the freezing temperature is about minus 78. Can we even handle -1? Not to come out 78% degrees centigrade. So I personally feel that we should set up a commission as well that will see how we can manage this and distribute it to Nigerians. The problem is, once this thing comes in, we should also create an avenue where we can monitor the types of vaccine we are using. Because very soon, there will be some vaccine that will be coming in that are not real. So those areas that I'm really looking at, I'm more bothered about than the facility that they will be storing them. So that's my own take on that.
Well, the Nigerian government has a technical working committee or technical group, as they call it, to advise on the type of vaccine that will be best for our environment. But of course, that's why we call for transparency, so that this information can be in the public domain. Yemi Adamolekun, let me come to you quickly. Vaccination, COVID-19 vaccination, access to vaccines within the context of the COVAX facility equitable access program. What are your thoughts before we go on break? And I'll come back to you after the break, of course.
Thank you. I guess just to highlight your points, I do believe that we'll do better off with the AstraZeneca vaccine. I mean, even though it has a less rate of efficiency, and I was just seeing something on the Arise website this afternoon that it actually is also not as effective against the South African strain of the vaccine. But your point is accurate in the sense that storing Pfizer is a bit of a challenge. But India has a vaccine that they're doing quite a bit of what they call vaccine diplomacy with, in donating to different countries around the globe, as far away as South Africa. So I don't know if I haven't heard that we're on their radar. So that might be something to explore.
Sorry to interrupt you. We'll take a short break. We may not be talking to India, but we're talking to the Chinese to get vaccine. We'll take a short break here on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. When we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News Channel. Still with me, I have Professor Bola Akintanuwa, former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Arise News Analyst Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and Wale Gomez, Managing Director of Quant Capital Limited. Well, before we went on break, I made a comment that Nigeria is talking to China, but maybe perhaps we should talk to the Indians as well, because India has the biggest immunization program in the world, which they launched more than a week ago. And they have the biggest vaccine production factory, the Serum Institute of India. Well, Yemi, let me come back to you. You were talking about who and who we should be talking to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think just nature will probably, the point India has made strongly is that a lot of people that the Chinese have promised free vaccines, they haven't delivered on. And in the case of making a case for themselves and how their capacity and their willingness to support other countries is driving their own desire. And also just naturally, I believe that Nigerians will probably trust a vaccine from India. A lot of medication that gets exported around the world come from India. than they would a Chinese vaccine. But I think, again, to Mr. Gomez, just to end on Mr. Gomez's point, is in terms of a plan. What is, I mean, you mentioned that Kaduna and Ekiti are the only two states that have cold storage facility. The DG that spoke of, I forget his agency, said there's a cold storage plan of 400,000 vaccines. If 100,000 vaccines are a drop in the bucket, the fact that we have cold storage for 400 is not significantly better. So a plan. There's vaccine resistance. There's already fake vaccines on the market. So, but as with sort of PTF in communication, what is the plan? How are we determining who's going to get the vaccines? Are we starting with schools? Are we starting with the elderly? We don't have a database, a proper database. We're trying to get one now with NIN. Maybe the NIN numbers will now be valuable way to find out who should get it, how it will be deployed. Our primary healthcare centers across local governments are heavily challenged. Those will have been a great starting point to reach communities faster. So it'll be very interesting. I mean, there are private companies who are already offering those on their HMO plans access to vaccines. How will that play out as well? So a lot of questions, very little answers, as always.
Well, but I think the point has been made strongly by Mr. Femi Falana that Nigeria can learn from other countries, how they're going about it. And there are many countries that are doing well. India, yes, even if there are questions. South Africa is not doing badly. South Korea is not doing badly. And China, we seem to have ironically benefited from the pandemic one way or the other, but that's not the issue. Prof, let me come to you.
I think that Madeleine raised the issue of logistics, and I quite substantially agree with her that it's a critical issue. But the question I want to beg you to help me find an answer to is people who are not infected by COVID-19, whether it's the initial one or the new variant, should they be vaccinated? Because when you look at international politics generally, as a conflict system, as a system designed, to encourage the supremacy of one over the other, I still have my doubts about any sincerity of purpose underlying this issue of vaccines. In this case, if we are going to receive vaccines, I am thinking that the government of Nigeria should be able to know and have a list of affected people. Then those who have been affected, we can try the vaccines. But people who are yet to be affected, I do not think they should even be given such vaccine. Why? For scientific reasons given us. I am still insisting that the international controversy surrounding all these vaccines, the government of Nigeria is not addressing it. They are not talking about it. Whether you want the Zeneca vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, the Russian vaccine, whether it is the Indian new version, or as Femi Falana suggested that we can look up to Cuba. The issue is what is peculiar to Nigeria. We are not addressing that. And I'm saying that based on what Femi Falana told us, and which we all know that, look, Nigeria is a terra cognita for competencies, medical competencies. Long during the 1970s, 80s, we do have all these professionals there. But because we disregarded them, brain drain, they went elsewhere, and they are doing very well overseas. I think that if we are going to have vaccines for Nigerians, I think while taking advantage of what we are importing, let there be made in Nigeria vaccines, and then we can have absolute trust there. My speculation, my fear, is that we are likely going to have different types of vaccines with different contents in such a way that the good vaccines may not, at the end of the day, be given to us.
Well, Prof, you seem to be pushing what is well known now as conspiracy theory around COVID-19. At another level, you are talking about vaccine nationalism. You know, there are countries that say, well, unless this vaccine is produced here, we will not take it. But in the case of India, yes, there is a locally made vaccine. There's also the one that has been produced in partnership by the Serum Institute of India with Pfizer. But here in Nigeria, we're not even part of that process yet. Other countries invested in research. They invested in terms of skills. They even got onto the, the demand queue much earlier. So we have our handicaps. Now, in some countries, you are told it's voluntary if you want the vaccine or not. But here in Nigeria, we don't know whether it will be voluntary or not. But what Nigeria is talking about is herd immunity. Once you are able to immunize over 60% of your population, then of course you can establish herd immunity in the country. Now, as for the COVAX facility, what is being promised by the WHO for Africa can only cover 3% of the population in the whole of 2021. Now, it's only by 2022 that they are even hoping to do up to 40% of the African population. So countries will need to look inwards, adopt their own measures, take other steps. The African Union has its own scheme under which, they are promising over 600 million doses of vaccines for African countries. And that's been sponsored by Afrexim Bank, right? Then some countries are going out on their own to go and buy the vaccines. So if you say Nigeria should produce its own vaccine, when are we going to do that, Prof? I
agree with you in total, but the issue is that I'm looking at it from the perspective of international politics. The mere fact that it has been theorized that, look, they want to depopulate Africa, they want to do this. You see, all these arguments you cannot just...
like President Magufuli of Tanzania.
Well, you see, you may call it conspiratorial, but these are hard facts that are there. You see, international politics is beautiful. How it is... So in this case, we are only warning.
Anyway,
let us see
I get your point, Prof. It's part of the debate. We'll take another short break here on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. When we return, the program will continue. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, Arise News Analyst Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and Wale Gomez, Managing Director of Quant Capital Limited. Let's take our next story. Nigeria's former Minister of Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is set to become the first African and the first woman to lead the World Trade Organization. The coast is clear for her to emerge as the occupier of that top position as the United States government under the administration of President Joe Biden endorsed her on Friday in what was expressed as strong support, according to a statement issued by the U.S. Trade Representative. All directions pointed towards Okonjo-Iweala, and she's now the only candidate contesting for the position following the withdrawal of our opponent, South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee, from the bid. The Geneva-based body tasked with promoting free trade has been without a permanent director general since Roberto Azevedo stepped down a year earlier than planned at the end of August after the WTO was caught in the middle of an escalating trade fight between the United States and China. Well, looks like we all have a strong reason to be excited. But Yemi Adamolekun, let me start with you. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, set to become the first woman head of the WTO and the first African to occupy that position.
Yeah, it's quite historic and also quite interesting in the advantage that she has just by time and chance, really. Because it was clear that the Trump administration didn't want that. They did all they could to ensure, to try, well, as best as they could, to ensure that she wouldn't be the new Director General. But as we said, with the Biden administration, literally within a month, they've expressed their support for her. Her Korean counterparts have stepped down, and the road is clear. Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala has sort of pioneered in a lot of different ways in her role in public service, from the World Bank to Nigeria's Minister of Finance, coordinating Minister of Finance, and now leading the world's trade body. It is quite an accomplishment, quite proud that she's Nigerian, that she's female, that she's African. So a lot, as you said, to rejoice over in the time when, as Mr. Falana talked about, we talk a lot about brain drain and Nigerians benefiting other parts of the world. But in this time, yes, she's on a global stage, but also in a way that Nigeria can derive benefit from. So yeah, some good news to be happy about.
Well, Modele Sharafa Yusuf, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, clearly the next WTO Director General. Your view?
It's very cheering news, especially because of what this would mean for Africa and African trade. As you know, Ruben, all previous trade agreements, including the Uruguay Round Agreement that was concluded in 1994, recognizes in theory that African developing countries have disadvantages that may warrant what they call special and differential treatment. In other words, that these countries may and should be granted better market access, be allowed greater flexibility in implementing trade rules, and be allowed to sign agreements with developed countries that do not require full reciprocity. This is what it is in theory, but in practice, that's not what's been happening. Trades may seem esoteric and take place behind closed doors, but as you know, their outcomes have real repercussions for people and for everyone's lives, from the small trader who crosses the border to the big manufacturing concerns and so forth. In Africa, trade is viewed as a driver of growth, a way towards sustainable development and poverty eradication. So I think Mrs. Iweala's tenure in that state would help to achieve the aims that have highlighted now. Africa needs more than aid. Trade is what Africa needs, and I am convinced that she will be in a good position to drive this. She also needs, she said while she was running for office, and I quote, that she'll try to figure out how to get women and youth who are behind the engines of growth in Africa to benefit more from world trade. We will be holding her to her words. She also said that she was prepared to help Africans add value to the goods or products that we produce for the global markets. This is very key because, as you know, Africans export cocoa, for example, and import chocolates, which is several times the cost, several times the value of the cocoa that they export. So we need to be adding value to things like that. Nevertheless, when it comes to helping realize Africa's trade policies, I think that her effort in helping to realize the big trade, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, will also be something that we'll be looking out for.
Well, Yemi has talked about history being made, and we all agree on that. Modele has drawn attention to the advantage that Africa could gain from having a Dr. Okonjo-Iweala at the head of the WTO. But again, there are other issues, Professor Akintanewa, as you know very well. Already, Modele was trying to set an agenda. And in the year of African the Continental Free Trade Agreement, yes, the point she was making is valid. But there are other bigger issues. The Doha round of talks, if you could just, focus on what the task ahead is for the next WTO DG.
Well, if we look at the problem, the main task before her, I wouldn't say it's a trade. Certainly not. But the politics of trade. And that is the issue. How she is going to manage the politics. Her predecessor, Azevedo, had had a lot of problems managing the conflicting political interests there. When you go back to history, look at Yaoundé 1, Yaoundé 2, which was restructured into Lomé 1, Lomé 2, Lomé 3, Lomé 4. Before a 10-year period was agreed to, managing relationship between Africa and Europe. This issue of trading, what are we trading in? What is it that we have? Preferential treatments. When you go back to GATT itself, before transformation into WTO, the critical problems has always been the interests of the big powers, the big trading countries, and all others. How do we explain the problem between the Americans and the Chinese, especially within the framework of WTO itself? So, as much as I want to agree that Okonjo-Iweala has the required competencies, the patience, to manage all this.
The intellectual heft.
Yes, for instance, look at one of her statements when she was campaigning. Permit me to quote it. The WTO needs a leader at this time. It needs a fresh look, a fresh face, an outsider, someone with the capability to implement reforms and to work with members to make sure the WTO comes out of the partial paralysis that it is in. I think this is the major task before her. And since she has recognized this, I think that she will certainly work towards that. And in this case, the Bible has it that if God be with you, who can be against you? God is certainly with her, regardless of the position of the Americans. And this is the bitter truth that, look, the God of heaven, God of Africa, God of Nigeria, is the Alpha and Omega, and we can expect the best from her.
Mr. Gomez,
thank you very much. When I heard about this week, I was so excited and elated. Number one, this is just to show that Nigeria is not just a bunch of no good nation. We have brought someone out that is a world-class brain that's going to be in charge of this. But from another angle, we have this organization called African Business Roundtable. And we've been trying to get America to make Africa the centerpiece of its foreign policy. And I'm so happy that this week, the President of America, and this is the confirmation of what he has just done, the President of America has declared that they're going to make Africa the centerpiece of his foreign policy. And the appointment of Okonjo-Iweala has confirmed the fact that business is going to come to Africa. And hopefully, by the time we set up our house in order, Nigeria will be the centerpiece of the trade agreement that's going to happen. So I want to thank God for this, because He has shown us that we Nigerians are the best, and I'm glad that they've taken us as a president of that.
Well, I agree with you on the point you made about the Biden administration. It's a clear demonstration that under President Joe Biden of the United States, we're beginning to see change, not just inside America, but also in terms of America's international relationship with the world. You will know that under President Trump, appointments to the WTO were frustrated, and the U.S. was accusing WTO of leaning towards China. And one of the major tasks for Dr. Okonjo-Iweala when she assumes office is to manage that relationship between China and the United States, and to ensure that the trade dispute settlement mechanism of the WTO is re-established, and that efforts are made to complete the Doha round of talks. And all of this, of course, under our commitment to reform, which was the platform on which she campaigned. And I think we should also commend the Buhari government. You know, it was the Buhari administration that nominated Dr. Okonjo-Iweala in June 2020. And at the time, we were also having this issue with the African Development Bank, with the re-election of Aki Additional. And the president had made a statement then that despite the fact that these people worked with the previous administration, he was supporting them because these are solid Nigerians who will turn out to be great ambassadors for Nigeria. And I think that, you know, that's something that we all should remember. And in the statement that Dr. Okonjo-Iweala issued, he actually praised President Muhammadu Buhari and all Nigerians who continue to stand by her. The next phase we're looking forward to is when the Ashwebi will be made available and all of us can go to Geneva to celebrate. Well, we move on to our next story, which is Myanmar. Myanmar's military have seized power in a coup against the democratically elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi, who has been detained along with other leaders of the National League for Democracy Party. The army has declared a one-year state of emergency, and in a statement broadcast on a military-owned television station, it says it carried out the detentions in response to election fraud and handed over power to military commander-in-chief Min Aung Hlaing. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Yangon to denounce this week's coup and demand the release of the elected leaders. Myanmar's military regime has, however, shut down the internet in the country, where that has been restored this morning. The coup derails years of Western-backed efforts to establish democracy in Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, where neighboring China also has a powerful influence. Well, before the chat around this subject, we'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll discuss the situation in Myanmar. We'll be right back. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Arise News analyst, Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and Wale Gomez, Chief Executive, Quant Capital Limited. Well, before we went on break, I introduced the subject about the crisis in Myanmar. Today in Yangon and the capital, protesters took to the streets saying that they don't want military rule and that they want all the detained politicians, including Suu Kyi, Madam Kyi, to be released. Prof, well, Myanmar has a terrible history of military intervention, 1962 to 2011. Suu Kyi herself was in detention for 15 years, and now it's like they are turning back the hand of the clock. Your take?
I think the lesson to be drawn from it is to begin to reflect on how we can involve a new concept like civilian coup in order to have an alternative to military coup. As we have rightly pointed out, the system in Myanmar is a collaboration, joint governance, civilian military. The military have always had the better, options, privileges, and so on and so forth. The coupists are not contesting the election result. They are simply contesting the procedure. Okay? They have argued that under normal circumstances, for you to have a walkie-talkie for your security agents protecting you, you should have secured an approval, because they want to ensure that what you have does not interfere with military intelligence outfits. They have said that when the state councillor was campaigning, he was not following the procedures. So when you look at all these allegations, rightly or wrongly, I begin to say that, look, is it because the military are permanently in possession of arms and ammunition that they can take advantage of that to plan a coup? All right, if they do, why shouldn't the civilians in that type of situation have what we can call a counter coup? Because you see, every time when an armed robber goes to a place, it is simply because he knows you are not armed and is armed. So unequal, a sort of imbalance of power. When there are coups, it's simply because one is caught unawares, is not armed, and you are holding arms. So I think that in protecting democracy, it may not be sufficient for the people to come out and be demonstrating. There is the need to provide for some constitutional provisions that will, under normal circumstances, if you plan a coup, I think it should be Chief Philip Asiodu who said that if we do want political stability, the center, the federal government, should not be made attractive. All right? I think he also argued in one seminar at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. He now said that, look, in this case, if you plan a coup, you will be there. But after you leave government, you will still try. You will still be tried. And I think that one way, an antidote, is a plan your coup. Fine. When you leave government, subsequent government should try you. Well, and that would be a good antidote.
Part of the problem in Myanmar is that the military establishment, called the Tatmadaw, is heavily politicized, because in the November 2020 election, they supported the opposition, even if the Electoral Commissioner said all those allegations do not apply. Modeli, let me come to you quickly. The situation in Myanmar. What should the international community do? The Security Council could not issue a statement on that situation because China vetoed it. And all the neighboring countries, Cambodia and others, they are saying it's an internal affair. An internal affair in Myanmar. They don't want to get involved.
Unfortunately, the international community, as you said, Aung San Suu Kyi's best bet for regaining her freedom and possibly returning to power. And while people all over the world would condemn a coup, as they have done, there doesn't seem to be that same kind of, they're not doing as vehemently as you would ordinarily imagine, as you rightly pointed out, because Aung San Suu Kyi herself is heavily compromised, and I'm yet to see what we can do to rally the world against this coup, especially given China's insistence that this is an international, this is an internal issue. Aung San Suu Kyi and the military, the heavily politicized military, as you rightly pointed out, Ruben, they have, as you know, a long history of playing cat and mouse with each other. And when Suu Kyi went ahead to defend the military in that Rohingya debacle that was when her halo slipped and she began to lose her standing in the international community. Please remember that the Rohingya are the Muslim community in Myanmar who have been displaced, who have been terrorized, who have been raped and beaten and killed and exiled. And when it was time for Suu Kyi, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, to stand up and say this is wrong, she did not do so. She not only defended the military, but with whom she had been playing this game, as I said, but right. She was whipping up some nationalism,
right.
which was to help her remain popular and win the elections, which she did. But unfortunately, when you compromise with evil, you still pay the price. Compromising with evil is a sacrifice of right or something right or good. In exchange, you hope for something else. But what tends to happen is you tend to lose both. And I think that's what has happened to Suu Kyi and her country.
Yeah, in 2017, I mean, that drew a lot of international reaction but the official position of the government was that the Rohingya Muslims are illegal migrants, but the international community says it's ethnic cleansing. Yemi, we have just about a minute to go. If you can put in a word quickly.
Just to follow up on what Modele said, it'll be very interesting to see how the international community does rise up to Aung Suu Kyi. That's her claim to fame. That's part of why there was a lot of attention on Myanmar when she was under house arrest. She was the lightning rod, or the light that people gravitated towards in terms of speaking for Myanmar. And now that, as Modele said, our halo has slipped, you'll see just how much, and international community is the best bet. But I'm not saying just best bet, but I think, as we've seen in other parts of the world, international community and ground game. The protests have started. It'll be interesting to see how local organizers step up on that and see how we pan out.
Thank you very much, Yemi Adamolekun. Thank you, Mr. Gomez and Prof. and Modele Sharafa Yusuf. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We see you.